It's a great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. He's the first ever elected Prime Minister of his country, and since he wanted a more, let's say, holistic approach when it comes to quality of life, development and progress, he pioneered the use of gross national happiness. He's greatly concerned about the global future and, as Bhutan's permanent representative to the UN, very focused on these Millennium Goals. He'll now share his insight with all of you. Let's show him what Danish hospitality is all about. Please welcome former Prime Minister of Bhutan, Mr. Jigme Thinley.
Thank you. Thank you. Lillian, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have a prepared text here since Lillian called me to say that I have to stick to my time of 15 minutes. And as a former politician, I never know how long I might go on, so I have it here. Mr. Boyson, Anna Rosling, ladies and gentlemen. The state of the world today makes imperative the concept of integrated development to guide individuals, nations, business, and indeed, the humankind that shares a common destiny. The mistake of having regarded development as purely economic and its pursuit to the neglect of equally important human needs have brought society to a state when survival itself is under threat. Likewise, making consumption the criterion for progress and placing self before everything not only negate an ethical basis for meaningful development, but are the main cause of civilization's unsustainable ways on the fragile and finite planet. Despite humankind's astonishing achievements, the world has not become more secure, just, peaceful, or satisfying. The economy, at best, is a capricious, volatile occurrence, not a system. Exclusion, insecurity, and despair plague the aged, the poor, and the youth, while the ailing planet is reacting with unprecedented ferocity and devastation to society's relentless abuse. Democracy is faltering, even at its founts, and leaders everywhere seem to lack vision and are losing trust. Competition and race for control of diminishing resources have become open and treacherous. In consequence, with international relations at their worst, frequent and horrific conflicts, destruction and displacement have become the new normal. A shopping spree, a night out in the theater, a meal in a restaurant is as hazardous as a transit through an airport or a railway station in any part of our turbulent world today. Where is the benefit of development if at the very least basic safety of life, family, home, or movement is not certain even in the richest and most prosperous nations? Humanity is hurtling toward a calamitous end, powered by the engine of our own genius and our heavy foot on the accelerator. Unless we begin applying the brakes, lay alternative tracks, and change course, we have little reason to speak of sustainability, much less of prosperity. When the world came together to take stock of the Millennium Development Goals and agreed to deliberate on society's even greater and deeper challenges to undertake yet another 15-year endeavor to build a safe and sustainable future, the Bhutanese people saw a wise and noble enterprise in the making. In all the deliberations leading up to the SDGs, Bhutan argued for the need of a vision and purpose for development that go beyond the promotion of long life and material comfort to enhancing human well-being and contentment in a world with diminishing resources. In this regard, we humbly shared our experience in what has been a 40-year pursuit of a holistic, integrated development process. Our former king was convinced that the purpose of development is to promote happiness, which he believes is manifest in the completeness of physical and mental well-being sustained by a resilient natural life support system. He saw his role and that of the state as the creation and facilitation of these conditions. Thus was conceived the philosophy of gross national happiness that has since guided Bhutan's transformation towards a dream of a happy society. In practice, the GNH paradigm is founded on 4 pillars, these being sustainable and inclusive socio-economic development, conservation of the fragile mountain ecology, preservation and promotion of culture, and promotion of good governance. These have been elaborated into a multi-dimensional GNH index built around 9 interdependent domains: health, status, educational attainment, income distribution, ecological diversity and resilience, cultural diversity and integrity, community vitality, time use, psychological well-being, and governance quality. Together, these ensure that every aspect of human life, the inner and the outer, for both the individual and the collective, as well as the health of the planet, are integral to our development process. Progress, from the GNH point of view, is the positive change in happiness level over time. The GNH index, which we employ, is a single number aggregate of 33 broad indicators that comprise both objective and subjective measures of conditions across all the domains. Bhutan has also initiated full cost and natural capital accounting that enable the monitoring of not only the intended benefits of development plans and programs, but their social, ecological, and other costs and changes, negative changes, that are normally not reflected in national accounts. The rewards of having pursued integrated development have not been disappointing. From its status as the poorest and most vulnerable among the least developed countries in 1971, Bhutan is today a low middle income country with a well-distributed per capita income of $2,600, which is nothing compared to what you earn here. The institution of the International Integrated Development World Prize in support of this 15-year agenda is therefore most timely and praiseworthy. It therefore gives me tremendous pleasure to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Hans Rosling and his family, represented by Anna here today, for their brilliant contribution to society, and to facilitate him and his family for the recognition that he so richly deserves. Thank you very much. Something more, something greater, and that is human well-being leading to happiness. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now it's time for a very, very important point of the day, the World Prize for International Integrated Development. And therefore, it's a great pleasure to welcome on stage the chair of the selection panel, directly from Australia, Dr. Lindsay Falvey. There you go.
Thank you very much, Lillian. And thank you for welcoming my wife and I here to Denmark. I will speak briefly because you don't need to hear about the prize or about me. You need to hear about the winner of the prize, and that's what's coming next. Distinguished guests here today, It's a great honour to hear you speak about these things which are completely consistent with what the World Prize for Integrated Development strives to acknowledge. It's also an honour to be able to administer the prize to the inaugural recipients. This is the first time the prize has been offered. It recognises a track record in integrated approaches to development. This might sound bland and naive and what we have done before in the past, because we've all heard of integrated development projects and so forth. Even the engineers talked of integrated development projects. This is something different. This is talking of a holistic view of life, total well-being in life, in the way that the former Prime Minister has introduced. So there is not only meeting the basic needs of the body and the basic ways of living or sustaining what we want to sustain, although that's not always the right approach. It is also about that essential spiritual part of our natures. Now, whether we define this as psychological or whether we define it as spiritual in a conventional sense, doesn't matter. These are all part of it. And what the prize is recognising is that in the past, our aid has not always worked for reasons that we have had a brilliant idea based on our own worldview and have failed to acknowledge the worldview of the recipients with whom we work. And those people have their own worldview. That is the important worldview. That's what integrated development aims to be about, and that's what the prize aims to acknowledge. Now, before introducing the inaugural prize laureates, let me just tell you who is on this selection panel with me. I just happen to be the chair, but I have 4 outstanding people with whom I work, one of whom is here today, Elspeth Krø. Could I ask you to put your hand up, please? Elspeth is Danish, that's why she is here today, and Elspeth is representing those types of things which the prize is trying to aspire to. She is working with indigenous communities around the world with Danida Save the Children. With her is Elizabeth Adu from Ghana. And I should say, the 5 of us come from the 5 different continents of the world, and then we try and balance gender within that. So I'm starting off with the ladies. Elizabeth Adu is from Ghana. She is a development lawyer from the World Bank, recently retired, and agreed to help us with this in her retirement. Then there is Carlos Perez del Castillo from Uruguay, the most highly decorated person from Uruguay. He sits on high-level committees for security in the world. He was the chairman of the WTO dispute between Boeing and Airbus. He knows how to sort out integrated problems. And the final member is Michai Virivaidya from Thailand, an old friend, but better known as Mr. Condom. He is the UN AIDS ambassador for the world. He did this by introducing children to that a condom should be in every house in Thailand, initially for population control, then for AIDS. But he has done much more than that, established schools that are self-funding private schools. He's been recognised widely, the Bill and Melinda Gates Award, the International Awards of the United Nations, the Ramon Magsaysay Award. These 5 people, I'm speaking of the other 4 people, are internationally recognised people who have helped us mount this concept of an integrated development prize. It's also fitting that I acknowledge Neeras. Neeras has warmly welcomed funding this prize. This is a prize that offers 20,000 euros in cash, as well as the award and a number of other things, by recognising that working across all of the spectrum of development, this enables integrated development to be put into reality. And I would just simply like to acknowledge Karsten and Tor here today for supporting this prize and making it what it has become already. But now to the laureate. The inaugural World Prize is awarded to Hans Rosling, Ola Rosling, and Anna Rosling. And I've been told my pronunciation of Scandinavian names is atrocious, but I think you know who I mean. Anna is here as the representative, and they represent Gapminder, the organisation they have jointly created, which is a means of integrating knowledge to make detailed statistical information readily intelligible to a wide group of people, but particularly policymakers from the point of view that I want to point out. In doing this, it destroys some myths and prejudices that we all have of just assuming that these statistics add up to this. But when presented with a time frame and showing changes, this can actually change the way that we look at the world, or give us a worldview which is somebody else's worldview. This has been critically important in informing a number of decisions in international development. In doing so, they join the legacy of a number of people who have been working with integrated development under many different names to try and bring in those views of the different people involved in development in a manner of partnership, rather than we're already rich, we'll show you how to become rich, we're already happy, we'll show you how to be happy. This is trying to understand other people, to work with them. This is what this statistical approach can do. So Anna, I'm very pleased to welcome you to here today, and in your, please come up. Yes, there's something to give to you here. I am going to say something. But before I give this to you,
yes.
Let me just say that in doing this, the committee, the selection panel, wanted me to repeat these words, that they see that this organisation, Gapminder, has created an integrated innovation of global significance. This is the statement, the highest statement that this committee awards. So Anna, I'm pleased to offer you this certificate, but I'm sure that other people will be pleased to send you a cheque. Congratulations on behalf of Gapminder in winning this award.
I think on behalf of everyone, we cherish your work, and congratulations to you and Gapminder. And we look forward to your presentation.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me here. This is extremely nice to be acknowledged getting this prize. So being here today, I'm just going to say that Gapminder then, what we're trying to do is to promote a fact-based worldview. And as you understood, it's me, Ola and Hans. Here you have the pictures as well, if you would like to know. And yes, we are a family. So I just want to say I was not planning for this. I was 16 and I fell in love with Ola. I had no plans whatsoever to work with my father-in-law. So it's like accidental. And it was not planned for, just so that you know. But then Hans started complaining about things, and both me and Ola, whatever. What happened was that Hans was complaining about like problems he had in his work, trying to make the world understandable. Meanwhile, me and Ola were studying arts, and we were studying social science, and we couldn't really get enthusiastic enough about neither the arts or the social science. The arts was so introspective, and it felt like, and I was born in an arts family, so I realized I was just repeating something from my upbringing. And in social sciences, you had all these guys, you were reading about all these big thinkers that were thinking big thoughts before the car, the telephone, and so on. I was like, what can you do about this? And then Hans was complaining that his students didn't get what he tried to explain to them, and he needed to simplify. And more or less, by mistake, we started doing things together just for fun, and we did it for several years without really thinking that this would be something we would work on. So it has like come gradually. So in the beginning, it was so fun, so we became less and less good students, me and my husband, because we started doing more and more, still completely without a plan, right? So we have been working together for 18 years under different shapes. The first company construction we had was like in 99 we started shaping up a little bit in different forms, but since 2005 we've had Gapminder. That was too much about that, but still that was what happened. It's always a weird thing, you know, representing your husband and your father-in-law. So I just need to tell that it was accidental, but too fun I couldn't resist, okay? So what are we trying to work against then? Well, if we look at the media, we see all these images from all around the world. We see natural disasters, conflicts, refugees, diseases, even paradises, animals in wild, exotic places, minorities doing minority-typical things, and different cultural aspects of dress codes and so on. And then we try to make something out of this and try to understand the world. But what we see is always the extraordinary. So it's so hard to understand what the world is really all about. It's not that this is wrong, it's just the exceptions. So, and that you can see when you look at what people think about the world. So if in a study, you asked people in 17 different countries what they thought about the state of the world. And they were asked, do you think the world is getting better, neither, or getting worse? And we have Sweden and Denmark. So in Sweden and Denmark, this is the percentage that thought that the world was getting better. I mean, it's a very, very tiny percentage, while getting worse is the majority. And you can see that within all these 17 countries that were measured in this study, and you see it all over again and again and again. So even though the world is actually getting better and better in very many aspects, you get this very negative feelings that people have. We have measured 2 different questions in something we call our ignorance test. And first I wanted to test you, but then I felt it was a bad day. So I'm nicer than that. So one of the questions is, how did deaths per year from natural diseases change the last century? And this is one question we've sent out to different countries. And we also asked it within organizations and companies and so on. And the majority, they answer that the deaths, this is the right answer, that it has halved. But it's only 12% that is answering the right answer. And for example, if you compare with Germany, you can see they are even worse off. Because this is what has happened, or this is what they are answering. So basically they think that natural disasters are just increasing. This is the trend line. You can see the same if you look at extreme poverty. You can see in the last 20 years, the correct answer that extreme poverty has halved. In Sweden, you have 23% saying that. In US, only 5%. Because most people think it's actually getting worse. And this is something we see all the time around when we ask questions. And to be really frank, this is, if we would have asked them, this is what I realized recently. We used to say that humans are worse off than chimpanzees. But actually, if we have asked the questions without even giving alternatives, just saying you have 3 to choose from, without even giving you the answering results, you would score better. Because all the time people score so bad at these questions. So they have preconceived ideas about the world that is completely wrong. And the saddest thing about this is not that people are wrong. I mean, you know that some kind of groups of people might be wrong because they are ignorant and misinformed and so on. But the really sad thing here is when you measure within organizations or companies that are working with these specific issues, they tend to score even worse, actually, if it's within their own field. And that is a little bit scary as well. And I think maybe that is an effect because you're so engaged in your field, so you tend to overestimate the negative trends in that area. So what we realize then, basically in the media we get the exceptions. They don't help us that much. And we tend to have a completely weird idea about the world. So what we need to do is to create some kind of a framework so we can see what it's all about. So we do it simple because we want everyone to understand. usually when we say we want like prime ministers to understand, that doesn't sound good. So we changed, we started saying we want school kids to understand. Sounds better. And then you can have prime ministers as well, just glancing at it without being humiliated by the colorfulness and simpleness, right? So in 2016, this is the world, 7 billion people, 1 billion lives in Americas, 1 in Europe, 1 in Africa, and 4 in Asia. And no, we have had this as a knowledge question as well, and nobody knows it. And I mean, it's not that crazy. If we split the Europe into West and East, the former like classical thinking West and East, Americas into North and South, we can see that what we usually call the West is only 15% of the world population. So it's quite ignorant as well that we are so stuck in thinking about the world from this perspective, because people are not actually living here. We can look at the bubbles. I guess most of you have seen them, but we can see if we can do a quick bubble tour. Let's see, now they are hidden behind. We go here. If we look at the bubbles, here in 2015, we can see that we have all, this is life expectancy and versus income per GDP per capita. And you can see how the countries are actually spread all over. And if we play them over time, we can do this with a lot of different indicators, of course. We can see all the bubbles are countries, the size is the population, and the color is what region it belongs to. But what is fascinating is that we can see that so much is happening. And one of the biggest problems is that people tend to think that the world is static. And you can see whatever indicators you choose, you will see that there is actually a change over time. We can go to babies per woman, basically a fertility rate, but people don't really get what fertility rate is. So we have it under the question mark if someone really wants to know. So we can do the same. We can see we started here back in the 1800s with about 7 kids per woman. And you can see here how the European countries and some of the American countries are actually reducing their children, and see now how huge changes we've seen, and actually that most countries are actually far lower than they were then. So we've gone from like 7 down to around 2-ish as the world average. And this way you can play with the numbers and see what happens over time. And I think that is getting the overview and realizing the world is not static, looking at it more like a flock in Swedish. When you see like a crowd of birds flying, that makes you realize things. Because you can spot anomalies, maybe anomalies. And you can also see the complete trend, because it's very often that we pinpoint the anomalies, even though we think we say something about the big trend, like the media tend to do. So, and we can see the same if we look at, this is income. So here we can see all the countries of the world divided again by the region they belong to. These are, the height is how many people live on different income levels, and we can play it over time. And obviously, if we go back to the 1800, you can see the line with extreme poverty. Most of the mountain is actually down in extreme poverty. You can see how population is growing. It's mostly Asians in the world, as you saw on the world map. And you can see now how it starts spread, how you get some wealth. Walking away, you have a divided world here, and how the big majority, the world population is increasing quite a lot, and you can see how it moves out of poverty. You still have about the same amount of people down in poverty, but the proportions are changing. So you can do these kind of things. Now, yes, I get this weird view here. I try to not look at that. So basically, we spent the first 10 or 15 years doing this kind of things, also being at Google, thinking, first we just did these animations. And then we started thinking, well, the problem is that people don't find it, because data is sold and no one finds it, or it's hidden in PDF files, or it's hidden in drawers, and it's like a huge problem with that. So we started by working to liberate data. That was our intentional goal, and to make data visible. then we realized that people actually search for data, so we need to be in search, so data becomes findable. So we spent quite a few years at Google, realizing there that we were completely wrong. Problem number one, no one searches for data of this kind, unfortunately, which was a really sad moment, realizing they were searching for life expectancy, but only if it was combined with the word cat. So they wonder how old their cat will be, but they have no intention to know anything about the world. And that was really, really depressing. So what we realized then was that the snippetification had a huge problem. You could see on the knowledge scores that people are completely wrong about the world. They score so bad on these knowledge tests. And they wonder how old their cat will be, and they are not interested in this topic. And we started realizing, even if we managed to get the search quality better, which we did, it doesn't really do that much. We have to change how people understand the world, and then we have to go to schools. So I started spending quite a lot, we left Google, I started spending quite a lot of time in schools talking to kids and teens, trying to understand what they knew about the world, what they thought about the world in the future, and so on. And even we spent a lot of time there also testing our concepts. And here, for instance, hello, now it's a little bit dead, I would say. Here. So I showed them this, for instance. This is the world population again, now in these seven figures. And I was asking the kids, one of the things I was asking them was, where would you consider that you belong? And now we have to remember that I'm in Sweden and asking Swedish school kids in different kinds of schools, in these very snobbish and these very like ghetto-ish like schools, but still Sweden, right? So the main result I got all the time, asking where are you, they would say here. Because when people are not in this field and they think about themselves, they think about you have poor, I'm not the poorest, you have rich, I'm not the richest, there you have Bill Gates and guys. So I'm probably somewhere in the middle, right? And they think they're here. And that, I would say this is the key problem. If the school kids think that they are in the middle, how can they understand the world? They cannot understand it at all because they are so wrong. Because, of course, they are up here, even though they cannot get it. We talked to a teacher a few weeks back, saying that he belonged to the group, the richest billion, and he got so mad at the people we work with and said to them, "You're so wrong, I drive an Opel, god damn it," you know. It's like, yeah, but you have a car. So, I mean, it's so basic, the problems we try to solve. So basically, we started by doing the bubbles, and we thought we were going to do fancy stuff, and we were going to make them searchable and add more features and so on. And then we go backwards, and now we're like fighting to get school kids to understand they are not in the absolute middle if you're in Sweden, but you are at the top. So we came up with a concept called Dollar Street that we will launch in a few weeks, hopefully. We said that a few times, but now it's actually almost true, I hope. So with the Dollar Street, we hope that we can actually compensate a little bit for this problem with thinking that you are in the middle when you're actually on top. So it's a very simple concept. Think of the world as a street. The poorest live on the far left, the richest on the far right, and everybody else in the world lives somewhere in between. And then we go and visit homes. We bring photographers who do standardized photo shoots within the homes and take video snippets and do questionnaires and stuff. But photos are the main thing. So we look at what people eat, what their toilet looks like, what their bed looks like, for instance, and then 136 more things. I can show you a little snippet of that here. Here is the Dollar Street, actually. So this is what you come to then. You come to a tool where you can see we have been to now 246 families all over the world in 46 countries. It's going to be an open tool where we hope people will contribute with homes. We have no homes in Denmark, by the way. So what you can do then is, as you can see, you can scroll down and you can see all these families, and then you can start looking at their belongings to understand their material standard. And we ordered all the homes from the left to the right, from the poorer to the richer, so that we can get an overview. So if we look, now we look at families, but maybe we would like to look at most loved item. And then we can see down there at the top image here, it's her t-shirt is her most loved item. Up here we have some kind of a photo book maybe. But sometimes I think about the materialistic happiness that you were talking, like in relation to happiness. I can see here if I can find, for instance, yeah, like this one, right? You can see the minion. So it's, I mean, when you are living in very poor condition, under poor conditions, you love things that are meaningful for you in the sense that it makes you survive, more or less. When you come up here, this one is my favorite of unnecessariness, right? So this is, in Kazakhstan, this is a favorite thing, and it can be contrasted to this one in Malawi, where you understand that having a plastic bucket is the difference between surviving and not, right? Having the quilted wool unicorn pony, My Little Pony thing, might not be that essential, right, for survival at least. So you can go around like this, and you can pick different things. You can look at toilets, for instance, which is one of my favorites, because when you travel, you usually not go and look at toilets at different levels, and here you can do it all. So we can do like segments here. So now we look at the poorer segments of the street, and then we fill the whole view with those toilets, and we can see what they look like, and we can see that it's very common that using a bush as a toilet, for instance. We go up here to the middle, and we can see we start to get more organized toilets, and then we come up here to the top, and we can see these well-decorated, thought-through designs of the toilets. So you can go in different directions within this tool, and you can look at many different photos, and we will add videos, because we have videos as well, but we have not added that yet. So this is how you can work with this, and what we hope to is to make these, basically what you see in the news is always the extraordinary, and here we try to focus and organize the non-ordinary, the everyday life when it's not staged, the functions everyone does, and see what it actually looks like at different income levels, and hope that that will help Swedish students realizing that they are not here. This is not their reality. They are definitely here. And what I think is fascinating as well is that we talk so much about culture all the time. It's culture, culture, culture. But I think it's fascinating to see when you do this kind of segments that culture is not the most important thing here. If you have this kind of money, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, a flush toilet is quite nice. And if you don't have money, doesn't matter how much you like flush toilets, you will not have one. I mean, it's very, very basic, but it's a lacking imagery. So what we hope, this is a well-organized database with the images you don't really want one by one, but hopefully you can make use of them if you have these amounts. And of course, it's free for anyone to use. You can take photos, and it's under Creative Commons, so you can do whatever you like with it. And I hope it will be meaningful not only in schools then, but also in companies. You have all these companies that try to understand their markets, and they put so little money because they have too small budgets to really understand the markets. But here you can actually get a grasp. So what you can do, for instance, if you're if you need to know more about, what should we take, Bolivia, then you can say, I only want to see households in Bolivia. So these are the 3 Bolivian households we have at this point. And then now you can see where they belong on the global income distribution, because I think that tends to be always forgotten. We think in our small context, we are here, and we think and look at what we see here in our reality, but we don't get the global overview. Then we need, of course, to add the national income distribution, because that is also quite important to understand. We haven't done that yet, but it's coming. Basically adding the mountains within the tool, but it's not there yet. So now let's see. So there you got an idea. And here, let's see, the next one. It's like it stops. Let's see. Here we have an example. The things that doesn't really make sense on photo, we need video. So here you're going to see what it can be like in the video. We see toothbrushing on different. We go down here a little bit, and we can see what toothbrushing can be like in different places. And it's quite similar, right? So, I mean, these kind of everyday functions, things people do all the time. She's very serious. And here you have some people doing it with a stick, if you don't have a plastic. The plastic goes quite far down. It's a durable and cheap item that you can actually have, but if you're too poor, you won't have it. So this woman, for instance, she's in Malawi, and she, as toothpaste, she scrapes from the wall and mixes with water and brushes like this. So what I like with the Dollar Street is that her wall will not only be tagged by a wall, it will also be tagged by toothpaste. And I think that is because some people have said, why don't you just crowdsource what you find on Flickr? But you can try to do that. Look for toilets, look for stoves or whatever, and you will see what the top 1% of the world population, mainly Americans, what they acquire or what they aspire to have in the future. That is what you find usually. But you have to add search terms like trashy families, or, you know, that kind of weird language to find anything else. So let's see. So what we do then with the toothbrushes, for instance, is we say like this. The poorest segment, they don't have a toothbrush. The middle segment in the world, they have. And the top segment, you start having one each. So we can start working with the photos as data and do these visual segments, because we know that people hate statistics. That has been another sad thing. Doing these colorful bubbles that moves and so on doesn't help if you talk to someone who hates statistics. You can get them somewhere, but you cannot get them all the way, because they can see that it's data. Here we hope that we can basically talk about living standards and these kind of values without really showing the numbers as the main entrance. So briefly, this is what it looks like. Here we have the income mountains of the regions. We do them to houses. We put them on the street. If we take North America, which is, as an example here, 5 households. We zoom in on North America. Here's one house is the Howards. We can see how they live. And we can compare them to another household in the US. You see, they are in different ends of the spectra of the American income mountain. And we can go into the category drawer, and we can see that it truly makes a difference living in the lowest segment of the Americans or in the richest. In this one, you have wooden drawers, and you have this really nice cutlery, well organized, while there it has to go with a plastic box. And we can add a family in the middle and see the gradual change, and we can do this kind of visual comparisons. We can look at the kitchen sinks, living rooms. Of course, we can do it in other countries as well. We can take China, 3 families in China on different income levels. We can see differences on their houses, on their sofas, and on their stoves. The cool part is when we start comparing at the same time. We can look at China and US, the 2 richest families we just saw. The same kind of play structure, of course. Maybe, I guess both are made in China, but I mean, it's very the same, right? And then the same type of bedroom. Very hard to see the culture here. What is culture in these images? And we go down, we can see the poorest family in China we saw, compared to a Nigerian family. When you see the image like this, it's hard to think that they have so much in common. But compare the images, you see they have the same type of ceiling with a plastic sheet, and then you have straws. Same kind of sofa, same kind of storage for grains, same type of dinner, and same way of cooking water. And here, I think it's really, really fascinating, because if we were traveling to either Nigeria or China, doesn't matter, and took pictures, if we managed to get into a home on this income level, we would take pictures, we would get back to Sweden, in my case, and I would probably show it to my friends and tell, I know something about the Nigerian culture, this is how you cook, or how you boil water in Nigeria. But when you look at the Dollar Street imagery, it doesn't make sense. This is how you boil water cost effectively on this income level. It has nothing to do with Nigeria. And I think it's important that we get away from these cultural stereotypes, because they make our mindsets blurry when we try to understand the world. So now we're going to take the quickest walkthrough of imagery, where you're going to see comparisons. Every single pair is from 2 different regions of the world. The ceilings, we do it really fast. Beds. Now we're in the poorest segment. Cooking, salt storage, eating without cutlery, eating with cutlery, you also can do in this segment, and toilets look the same. We go to the middle. It's a little bit a big group, I admit, but for educational reasons, we cannot make too many groups, so now we have one. It's big. First, we see here, all these families have one thing in common on different regions: 2 kids. That's the world average. Same type of light, same type of salt storage, similar beds, storing the cutlery the same way, pens, roofs, walls, waste dumps, and toys. And if we look here, we can not really determine whether we are in US or Sweden, in Kenya or Sweden, Philippines or Ukraine, Mexico, Sweden, Tanzania, Palestine, Vietnam, Kenya, Tunisia, Colombia, China, Sweden, China, Latvia, China, Mexico, Sweden, Kenya, Egypt, Ukraine, South Korea, Sweden, Russia, Tanzania, Cambodia, Latvia. Yeah, you get the point. It's quite fascinating to see the similarities. In a global world, it's so ridiculous to stick to these talking about countries, because it's income levels that will determine a lot. So then we do this, that we organize the imagery. I have 1 minute left, I guess. I will use that wisely. So we can do this kind of segments. We can look at logs on different income levels, typical, light, beds, how you go from sleeping on the floor, getting a bed, and then getting one each. Roofs, toilets, how you in the middle start getting some kind of privacy and try to make a pit where you at least won't slip into. Water, the gradual improvements, and also food. How you go from deficient to nutritious, but like same every day, to delicious, and you choose. So you have 5 different meals a day usually. Each one of those are different from the other, and you tend to eat different things every day, because otherwise you're afraid of getting malnourished. And then we can organize the imagery more like this and use photos as data. And as I said, it will be free. It will be open under Creative Commons, and we hope for even Danish homes. So please come forward. But now I'm gonna. My last minute will probably be 3 minutes, and now it's coming. Now it starts. So we're trying to combat these extraordinary imagery, and how can we do that? Because what happens is not only, it's so easy to blame media for everything that comes in. And we're like, it's the media, and you should read more serious media. And But the problem is actually something else, I would say. I mean, the media they give us what we want, because our brains want to have drama. And we are craving for drama. It's like the same thing as for sugar and fat. We can't resist it. It has to be dramatic for us to consume it, otherwise we will not. And I think that is the hard thing that we have to combat, because how can we blame the media for delivering the things our brains really like, we really need it? So then we have started developing a concept that we call factfulness. And it has more to do with how can we stay calm and sane when we think everything gets worse. We're panicking and like, everything will go bad, and is it worth doing anything? It's so bad anyhow. And we read the news and it just piles up. And I think the older we become, we think it gets even worse and worse and worse. Most likely it's because we pile up in our brains so many things of similar kinds. The wars we can remember are more and more and more. And they're like, oh, it must get worse. But it's just that we have read about more things, right? So then we are actually writing a book now, trying to combat how we can help people to get a more calm and relaxed way of functioning in this horrific, scary, dramatic driven worldview. So what we have done, since my minute I'm just in the beginning of the minute, so therefore I will not give you the whole concept, but I will give you what we have developed, which we call the 10 Commandments, that will help you stay sane in all this. Because how can you become fact-based in your decision-making when your brain gets you panicking? It's so hard to make good decisions with a panicking brain, right? And then we're like, we're just run around panicking. It doesn't work. We have to relax, we have to look at data, and we have to try to understand how we can get our brains to relax so that we can understand what we see in front of us. So now you will get 10 commandments for how you can approach the world around you. So first of all, usually when we see things that scares us, we get this panic, fear feeling, right? It's scary. But what if it's not dangerous, right? So the first thing you have to do is to control your fears. Because if you don't, then you will screw up in decision making, right? Or understanding trends and global development. We all the time hear that things are getting worse. But what if you only see the dips in something that is actually improving? So expect to see negative news, right? And usually we get the feeling it's big, and we get, something is really, we get a big number. But you have to compare it, right? Big compared to what? You always need to put it in comparison with something else. So check proportions. Oh, and then you hear, look at the gap. The gaps are increasing. And then you have to see, where is the gap, right? Because we all the time talk about the gaps. But are there really these kind of gaps? Remember the majority. If we don't get the majority, we always get the extraordinary, and we get this screwed up idea about the world. They look strange. The stereotypes are haunting us, right? But what have you seen? I mean, they have brains. Everyone has brains behind their weird cultural hats, right? See through stereotypes. If we don't do that, we end up in trouble as well. And we often hear that something is static and it's the destiny. But what if the destiny is slowly changing? Is it really a destiny then? Notice slow changes. And that is a key, because we think things are stable. You see, I'm quite fast now. The minute is just about to, I'm halfway in, you know. This is the solution. We very often hear that there is one solution, right? But what if other solutions exist? Use multiple tools. And we see patterns in everything. And that is actually a problem, because what if there is no pattern? So is there a pattern? We have to ask ourselves. And we need to avoid sweeping generalizations. That's the bad guy. We could have made with the hair, so we could see that it was Trump, for instance. You know, someone that everyone is like certain that this is the global crook, or the bad guy, who knows, right? But maybe there are others as well, right? We're so eager to find one to blame, because it makes life easier. Resist blaming. And then it's now or never. We hear it all the time. We have to act now, and we have to do it exactly like this. But can we take it stepwise? Maybe it's better to take small steps and see what happens and adjust. So here we have the dramatic instincts. It's not the media, it's the dramatic instincts, and we can actually control them by using the commandments. So the book, it's called Factfulness, and it will be ready in 2018. So we are quite in the beginning. And what we try to do there is combining the fact-based worldview with anecdotes from especially Hans's life, because they are so crazy things he has done, so that we have to use them, and then trying to help people foster a new way of using data, sort of. So we say that people need to have a framework, a global framework. So when we get all these snippets of information coming through, especially from media and so on, we need to put them somewhere, and we always need to ask ourselves these questions before acting on them. And